Good morning and welcome to the worship of God with the Delray Church as we are here on this Labor Day weekend. Labor Day is set aside to celebrate those who provide the work that have built our country and built our lives. And we are created to work. We are created to enjoy and to know the satisfaction of working. And many of you have been working since childhood. I wonder if you remember, what was the first job that you ever worked for which you received a paycheck, actual pay? I remember that the first job I ever did, I made $1.50 an hour. And when it was done, I had made $22.50. And it was so much money, I didn't know what I would ever do with that much money. Well, what did you do with your first paycheck? Do you remember what you bought? Anything special? I know that I ended up buying, the first thing I bought was a Zebco 202 fishing reel. My first real fishing pole. Up to that point, we had always just gone into the woods and cut a small tree and used that as a pole. Now I had a fishing pole. And that was the result of working. There is a reward for working. And God has created us in His image. And God likes to work. God is always about the business of creating and working. And because we are in His image, we appreciate work. We appreciate the opportunity. God created men and women in all shapes and sizes and colors, but we all have His image, and therefore we find work rewarding. Adam and Eve were in the garden to work. He put them in the garden so that they could take care of it. Even in paradise, man had a purpose. Today, not everyone likes to work. Some people expect to lay around and let others do the work for them. And I think the worst thing we can do for someone is to give them what they can earn for themselves, because in doing so, we ignore that they are made in God's image, and we take away their humanity when we take away their ability to enjoy the rewards of working. This country was not settled by people who were afraid of hard work. And I know many of you know the satisfaction of getting up early in the morning and going to work and coming home with blisters on your hand, but you have also earned a paycheck that will help supply the needs of your family. We were created to get our hands dirty. Sometimes work means that you have to be hot, get dirty, and sweaty. And not all work is pleasant. Not all work is clean. On Labor Day, we recognize the men and women of our country who are willing to get their hands dirty for the sake of their families to earn money. But not all jobs are considered clean, and certainly in the days of Jesus, shepherds were not considered clean in good society. Shepherds were not allowed to go to the synagogue because they were considered ritually unclean, because they were out in the fields with the sheep. And sometimes the most important jobs don't always come with the best attention. But Jesus chose the role of shepherd as a way of illustrating for us His relationship with us. Jesus said, "I am the good shepherd." We find in John chapter 10, Jesus said, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand abandons the sheep and runs away. But I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life, only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I have received from my Father. This morning, as we explore, what does it mean? Jesus is the Good Shepherd. What does that mean in our relationship to him? We're going to talk about Jesus as the shepherd has loyalty to us, he has authority over us, and he has credibility through us. So let's get right into this. Jesus talked about his loyalty. And what he said was that there is a difference between the good shepherd and the hired hand. The hired hand is just there for whatever pay he receives. But the good shepherd is invested in the lives of the sheep. He knows the sheep. He calls them by name. They follow him. He cares for them. He's been with them ever since they were born. He takes care of them, and so he is personally invested. And so he is very loyal to the sheep. And his loyalty then provides an example for us to follow. We see examples of loyalty in our lives around us. Soldiers who are loyal to their duty and who rush out into the line of fire to rescue a fallen comrade. We might see nurses or doctors who risk their lives to provide care and to create a relationship with the patients that they serve. We see loyalty as the best of human characteristics. They are a reflection of God in our lives. But not everyone is loyal. Some people are very selfish. They make promises they don't intend to keep. They take vows and then break them. And because of their selfishness, they end up hurting people. And maybe you have been hurt by someone who pretended to be loyal but was not. Loyalty is demonstrated in love expressed over time. Sometimes we all, like sheep, go astray. There are times when even our loyalty to Jesus wanes and we wander off like sheep that wander off. But Jesus, as the Good Shepherd, is always loyal to us, always seeking us, always calling us, always inviting us to come back. He is loyal to us, even when we are not loyal to him, in hopes that we will come back and be loyal to him. But we must not presume upon his loyalty and feel like we can take advantage of that, because we also need to know that the shepherd has authority. Jesus said, "The Father knows me and I know the Father." His authority came from the Father. He was not the shepherd because he had asked for the job. He had not asked the sheep to vote whether or not he would be the shepherd. He is the shepherd by virtue of creation and virtue of the Father. And so he is not afraid to tell us he is in charge. And the sheep always need to know that the shepherd has authority. There's never any question who is in charge. When you go to your first job, one of the first things you had to learn was who was the boss, and that the boss was in charge. If sheep could vote, they would make all kinds of foolish decisions. They would go into dangerous places where they would get hurt. They might eat plants that were not good for them. They would drink water that was perhaps contaminated. They would spend too much time hanging out where the wolves or the lions could get them. If sheep could vote, they would harm themselves. So the shepherd has authority. He does what is right for the sheep, whether they like it or not. And they do not take a vote. He does what is right for the sheep. In the same way, in the home, parents do not ask the children to vote on matters that are critical to the safety of the children. Parents do not allow the children to outvote them. If children could vote, they would eat all the wrong food and they would play in the middle of the street and they would hurt themselves. So parents who are wise know that they are the authority in the home, just as the shepherd is the authority of the flock. Because Jesus is the great shepherd with authority, he has the authority to welcome all people. You know, there are many different kinds of breeds of sheep in the world. And I suppose that if the sheep could vote, they would say, well, we don't want to be mixed up with those sheep. They look different from us. Their wool is a different color. They're a different size. They're a different shape. We don't like those sheep. We don't want to be associated with them. But Jesus said, I have sheep that are not of this pen, and I must bring them. And they will listen to my voice, and they will be one flock and one shepherd. The Jews did not know, as Jesus was speaking to them, that he was even talking about the dreaded Romans, who were their enemy. He was talking about the Gentiles, who they considered unclean. But thanks be to God that we have all been included in God's plan. One shepherd, one flock. We are all invited. Jesus said, when I am lifted up from this earth, I will draw all men to myself. Emphasis there on the word all. Everyone is welcome at the foot of the cross. No one is excluded because of their size or their shape or their skin color or their language. All are welcome at the foot of the cross. And if the sheep would say, excuse me, Mr. Shepherd, we don't want to be associated with those sheep, the shepherd would say, I didn't ask you. The shepherd doesn't have to ask the sheep for permission to be in charge. He is the good shepherd. And finally, he says, I have authority to lay down my life. His commitment to the sheep is not just that he gives them what they need for food and drink and rest, but he even lays down his life, willing to die to protect them. Jesus came to this world knowing that he would die for the sins of all people. He knew that without his death there would be no forgiveness of sins, that an innocent life had to be given in place of those who were guilty. When Jesus went to the cross, it was not like his ministry had made a mistake. It wasn't like Jesus had underestimated his enemies. Jesus knew when he came that he would die. And so he said, I have authority to lay down my life, and I have authority to take it back up again. And next week, we're going to talk about Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life, that Jesus has power over life and death. So Jesus had authority to lay down his life. He had authority to take his life up again. And he said, no one takes it from me. Standing in front of him, as he was making that statement, were the very Pharisees who would put him on trial and condemn him to death. And perhaps even then they would remember his words, no one takes it from me. I lay down my life. And because Jesus has authority, he has authority to build his church. The authority to build his church the way he intends it to be. Again, not according to the vote of the people, but as he designs it. Jesus said, I will build my church. Notice the word my. This is my church. This is not a corporation. We are not shareholders who come together at annual meetings and take a vote on whether or not we will follow what the shepherd wants. This is his church. He has built it according to his plans. Jesus is the one who has organized the church. He is the architect. His plans are the only ones that matter. And his plan includes each of us to have a part. That we would all have a role in helping others. God has given to us spiritual gifts and the ability to take part in leadership roles. And every one of us needs to have a part. Jesus didn't just feed the sheep and give the sheep salvation. Jesus has given us power. He has empowered us to make a difference, to become part of the effort, to reach out to others and bring them in. Everyone has a part. And if you have not found your place of service in the church, wherever you worship, if you have not found a place of service, if you're not getting involved in serving or leading, then you are failing to live up to what the shepherd has empowered you to do. The sheep can become the shepherds under the authority of the great shepherd. That we become the elders or the teachers or the leaders that will help others grow in Christ. None of us come to take advantage of the flock for our own desires, but we come to serve the one who is in authority, and the only authority is Jesus Christ. And finally, the next part that we need to remember is Jesus said, because he is the shepherd, he has credibility. The Pharisees hated Jesus, but they could not deny his miracles. And people in the crowd said, he's talking crazy. I don't know if we should follow him. But others said, these are not the words of a man who is possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? The miracles that Jesus performed gave his message credibility. But it's important to notice that even though he performed miracles, those miracles were not enough to convince people to follow him. Miracles can add credibility, but they do not save people. The only way to save people was for Jesus to die on the cross and then for people to make the choice to follow him. And even though many of the people in front of Jesus that day had seen the miracles, they would still choose to walk away from him. Many of the people who saw the miracles would later say, "Crucify him, crucify him." We need to be careful about being too impressed by the whole idea of miracles, because miracles alone will not save anyone. And many of the people who were there that day still walked away from Jesus. Judas Iscariot had seen every miracle that Jesus performed, and he still betrayed Jesus. Miracles are no substitute for our willingness to make a personal commitment to follow Jesus. Jesus is the Good Shepherd. Because of the Good Shepherd, he has loyalty to us, and we need to have loyalty to him. He has authority over us, and we respond to his authority. He has credibility because of the miracles, and our obedience to him gives credibility to our faith. Jesus said, "I am the Good Shepherd." He said that so that we would understand that he has compassion for us, that he loves us, that he takes care of us. He not only wants to offer us salvation, he wants to include us in his family, and he wants to transform our lives so that we can be part of the mission to reach out and save and help others. Your life can make a difference. But for your life to make a difference, you have to make some choices. Jesus is the Good Shepherd, but what about your life? Because Jesus is the Good Shepherd, he has loyalty to us. But we need to ask ourselves, do we by our actions and our words show loyalty to Jesus? Jesus is the great shepherd with the authority. But do we by our lives and our actions show a submission to his authority? Do we respond to his words? Are we obedient to him? And finally, because of his miracles, Jesus as the Good Shepherd had credibility. But today, credibility for the gospel comes from the transformed lives of the men and women who follow Jesus. Do we, by our lives, add credibility to the message? Jesus is the Good Shepherd, and he says to you today, "Come and follow me."